yeah, I had to come in because I'm in the showroom right now, and I don't do shipping. That's not like what I do. And I have like 12 packages that are going all over the world. And I'm like trying to figure out how to like pack them. Like there's like for DHL, you have to do like all this commercial invoicing. There's like a 20-step process to do international shipping. And it seems like it should be self-explanatory, but it's not. And like I don't usually do all of our shipping. We have an office assistant who does it, and she's in the DR and has absolutely no internet. So I'm just like, I took like, she gave me notes and I like watched her but it was like 4 weeks ago when we were closing down. And I was like, yeah, 1 or 2. I like literally have like, I can't tell you, it's like the floor is just full of packages. I'm like, I don't know how to do these things. So it's taking me a long time here, but.
Yeah. I've had to ship, because my old boss he collected meteorites. I mean, I've told you about that before, I think. And so I've had to like ship meteorites all over the world, like via DHL.
Yeah.
It's so crazy.
It's impossible. It's like, it sounds so self-explanatory. My boss is like, it'll take you 10 minutes. I'm like, this is going to take me 4 hours.
Yeah.
Well, first I had to go and find all the product, our showroom's quite large. And then.
Oh, I got to admit, I turned on this stupid thing called waiting room, and I should not have turned it on. So I have to like manually admit all the people from the waiting room into the interview.
Yeah.
Oh, sweet. We got some people signing on. This is great. I guess we could just like wait a few more minutes and just like see who else signs on.
Yeah, whoever wants to join in can join in,
Yeah. Fantastic. Very, very cool. And hey, everybody. Everybody's in our respective quarantined locations.
Well, they're also all on mute.
Yeah. I think.
Hey, Janet.
Hey.
Put up over the shoulder.
Now, I have the thing that says mute upon entry. You guys can unmute yourselves, right?
Yes. They should be able to.
Yeah, cool. Very cool. Yeah. So how was your journey into the showroom this morning?
Honestly, it was pretty chill. I mean, there's really not that many people in New York right now, so like out on the streets. So we kind of it was a bit of a easy peasy, I guess. Yeah. Kind of the most pleasant the New York City subway has probably ever been.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. Now, where exactly is your showroom located?
36th Street between 7th and 8th Avenue. So like right in the center of the garment district.
Yeah. The garment district is a trip.
Yeah. I mean, it used to be where the actual factories and like warehouses were. There are still some here, but more of that's obviously moved overseas. But yeah, in general.
Yeah. I remember hearing because it was a lot of it was like a really heavily like old school Jewish New York business center, the garment district. What were they called? It was called like Shmata or something like that.
I have to request permission to record from you, Lucas. Is that okay?
Oh yeah, that's fine. Where do I grant you permission?
I'm just going to start recording now because like I said, my colleague wanted to.
Yeah, I am currently recording it right now as well.
Okay, so maybe you can send it to me then.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because I'm not sure how to.
Yeah, no. So the shmata is actually like a Yiddish word for sort of like an oversized style kaftan. It's kind of used more in a slang word. So that's the word shmata is kind of there's a term called garmento as well that essentially means when garments used to be made all here, that was a good thing. But now sometimes garmento is used in more of a negative word, meaning that people are trying to make cheaper product, like to knock off other things. So the word garmento has kind of evolved and changed over time.
Yeah. I remember hearing that in an interview one time. It was like I was listening to like the Mark Maron podcast or something, and he had like old relatives that like worked in the garment district, like his that in like the the 60s or 70s or whatever.
Yeah, it was very, very different than now here.
Yeah.
Did you want we want to wait for some more people? You want me to do a little introduction?
I mean, I guess we can start right now. It's about 5 after. Yeah, I think first and foremost, just give yourself a little introduction, and followed by maybe, like a brief bio, like what you do currently, where you've worked previously, what you did, and then we can kind of get into like the trajectory of how you got there, how you started.
So currently, I guess maybe good places to start from where I am. I work for a design archive and a luxury vintage showroom in New York City. And after I do my little talk, I can show you guys, give you a tour, which is why it's good that we're doing this on the day that I had to come into the city and see the showroom. But essentially what we do is we have over 6,000 vintage prints and about 35 racks of vintage garments. We have them organized by the decade. So we have things from the 1860s up into the early 2000s. We have designer, we have non-designer, we just have some beautiful pieces. And we work with fashion designers who buy for inspiration. Sometimes you're going to see an old embroidered piece. Maybe I can give my talk and tour as I do this because it's going to be a little bit easier. If you look on our racks here, you guys like Free People or Anthropology or any of those kinds of brands. A lot of those, I work with a lot of those brands. They come and they buy these vintage textiles and they use them for contemporary design inspiration. Sometimes it's going to be about lace. We have a huge Victorian lace collection and dress collection from the 70s, and designers will come and they'll buy this and they send this to factories to replicate contemporary fashion and textiles. Same thing with your prints. A lot of the prints that you see in the stores are all referenced and inspired from vintage garments. So this is a whole rack of 1960s mod. We work with Marc Jacobs, we work with H&M, we work with The Gap, Express. A lot of those prints all come from either original textile studios or vintage, which is what we collect. So as you can see, our showroom is quite extensive. And on top of working with the designers for inspiration, we also work with film and television. So we've worked with Gotham. We worked with a lot of new shows that haven't come out yet, so I'm not allowed to say what they are. The Deuce on HBO. Again, a lot of stuff. This is something we've been building upon in the last couple of years, but lots of films. And then we also work with musicians and regular celebrities who love beautiful pieces. Florence and the Machine has bought a lot of vintage from us, but additionally, she's bought our own original collection because on top of sourcing all these beautiful old pieces, we also have a creative director who takes the antique textiles and reworks them into contemporary silhouettes and makes them, for celebrities. For example, we actually made this dress for Rihanna.
Oh, wow.
So that's all made of gold metal mesh. And we custom made that piece for her. But this entire rack behind me is all of our own pieces. Some of them are made from caftan, some of them are made from chenilles, some of them are made from Victorian lace. We run the gamut of evening wear to casual wear. So those are all one of a kind, essentially couture, and very unique. So again, very all-encompassing business. We work with designers, we work with stylists, we work with film, television, and then we work with retail clients as well. Additionally, we also sell racks of our vintage on consignment and also during, like, they call them pop-ups or trunk shows at other boutiques. So Trina Turk is a designer who's very 60s, 70s influenced, and we're friendly with her. She's a client of ours who buys for design, but she also puts vintage in her store and intermixes it with her contemporary product. So our business is very all-encompassing, and I get to do a lot of amazing things. My background is in design, in fashion design. I went to school at Drexel University in Philadelphia, and I specialized in menswear there. I worked as a designer in New York City as an intern. I started in school because Drexel has a co-op program. Internships are super important. So when we talk about trajectory, just know that your work experience and getting internships is probably one of the most important things I've done in my career to get here. And that was part of my university's program. So Drexel is a co-op program, and you go to work for 6 months, and that's considered your credit. But it's really an amazing experience because it's not like you're interning and you can go after school or something. You can actually live in a different city and work for a company and like live the experience, which is what I did. I went to school in Philadelphia, but I moved to New York for 7 months, and such an amazing experience
Yeah.
to learn here. But yeah, then I worked in menswear for a larger company, Macy's Merchandising Group, and I did private label. So a lot of the labels that you see inside Macy's, like INC, Style and Co., Charter Club, American Rag, those are all private labels. So those are a lot of labels that are designed in-house through Macy's. And then they also buy, like buyers work at Macy's and also buy product from other brands. But at Macy's, I worked in design. After Macy's, I was there for 4 years. I moved to San Francisco because vintage is a passion of mine, and I've been collecting vintage since I was a child. Just have always loved it. Been started shopping in my mom's closet, and wanted to move to San Francisco just to try it out. You know, can't hurt to see other things in life.
Mhm.
Wasn't the city for me, but it was a great experience. I learned a ton about vintage retail and styling, and then moved back to New York and started doing menswear design again. I worked for Club Monaco for 2 years, and then I went to Express for about a year and a half, 2 years, before I came to this opportunity, which is now where I'm at the Design Archive. And I was here for 3 years, and traveled all over the world, meeting with different designers and clients. But then I tore my ACL and was not able to travel and was physically unable to do that. So I went back to design. I did women's wear for about 6 months, which for me was not my preference. I actually prefer doing menswear. So then I decided my real passion is vintage. And after my knee healed up, I came back, and now I'm the director of the showroom.
Sweet.
Yeah.
Wow.
Obviously, at the moment, our team is very small because a lot of people are laid off at the moment because of what's happening in the world. But generally, we have a team of about 11 to 13 people. Not everyone's here in the US. We do have like freelance agents that we work with in London and in LA who help us out with our clients there as well.
Okay, so the company that you work for is Morphew, right? But it's
Right. So
allied with another company, or
right. So Morphew, as you saw when I was showing you the Rihanna, Morphew is all the retail side. So I'm going to see if I can find Paradox, like I said, is textiles, prints, and working with designers. I'm going to turn 1 second, guys. I got to put you down. Paradox actually started with the print archive. Like I said, people have been collecting vintage textiles for forever and ever. Here is our print archive. We're in the middle of reorganizing it. So each of these cubes has about 100 to 300 rolls of vintage prints. Now they'll range from 1920s to, we don't really go anywhere past the 70s because then you hit copyright laws. Artwork is very copyrightable and you can be sued in a fashion company if you're not cautious with that. So all vintage is design open source unless it has a designer name, and then you legally can't use it. But like you can see, this is a bunch of fun 80s stuff. So a lot of people are into the 80s prints right now. So this is probably more for when I was growing up, but you know, people take all these fun prints and they rework them and they put them on contemporary clothes. So that's how a lot of people get their artwork. Vintage artwork tends to have a little bit more depth because it's all hand done. Things that are done on the computer have a different visual look. So a lot of designers like to start from vintage.
So how do you transfer those patterns? Do you digitally scan them and send them, or do you send samples of them?
People
Or
will usually just take the physical swatch. So they'll take that swatch. Some people have, there's a team in design called a CAD artist, and it's a computer animated drawing. And that is where they take it. It's kind of similar to graphic design, although graphic design does tend to be a little bit more slogan focused or t-shirt placement focused, whereas a CAD artist will be able to take, for example, we have our mannequin print, take any of these prints here and redraw them on a computer so that you can, it's called digitizing, and you send it, that's how you send it to the printer to put onto your fabric. So it eventually all has to kind of get digitized, just because in this day and age, most things are done not just from like screen block one by one. It's usually done in yards and yards and rolls, and it's usually done overseas.
Yeah. Wow. So in this, so you're not in this current job, you're not really doing any designing per se.
We do design. We have a creative director who takes, like I said, all the antique textiles and he reworks them. We're a small team, so we're always collaborating. I mean, it's
Mhm.
hard when you work in a place that's full of thousands of beautiful clothes. When he's designing or draping things on a mannequin, there's nothing up on a mannequin right now. Otherwise, I take you upstairs to our little mini atelier and I can show you where he puts them on. Um, but if you follow our Instagram, he often does videos of him like working on the mannequin and things like that. So it's kind of fun to see. But we always talk about stuff. We're always collaborating. The creative process is very collaborative. So he's like, I don't like the way this is fitting. What do you think? And we talk about it.
Yeah.
So I'm not technically designing, but to be fair, I actually think what I do, because I work with so many interesting designers. I mean, I got to meet Domenico Dolce. I've gotten to meet some of the people I studied in school, which is, you know, pretty inspiring on its own. I actually find half of what I do is more creative working in the sourcing inspiration side and sales than necessarily when I was always designing on a computer in the contemporary world.
Wow. And I mean, I'm sure, and I'm also sure that your design, your years of design background are like just like a tremendous everyday asset to what you do
Yeah,
now
I mean,
currently.
understanding, especially when half of our client database are designers. So understanding their process, it's always hard when you do something and you can't always put yourself in someone else's shoes to understand their role. And that's a super important thing because in fashion, there's like, I mean, in all careers, there's like 50 parts to what the fashion industry means, right? So we
Mhm.
don't always understand each other. But for me, because my background and I worked in corporate design for 9 years, I can really understand what these designers are going through, like what their calendars are like, what their budgets are like, their approval process for purchasing artwork, and all of that. That's kind of sounds weird, but it's very nuanced.
Yeah, yeah. That's man, that's a lot. That's a and I've got like some general questions for you about I mean what I guess what was the beginning of your inspiration of thinking of going into this field? Like how like what led you to in this direction in the first place?
I think I've always, like I said, I've been collecting. I've loved vintage and fashion since I was a kid. My mom always said that I would never let anyone dress at me except for myself, and I love to pattern match. Even as a kid, I love to max. I always wear 4,000 different patterns. So I guess it was just something I loved as a child. As I grew up, to be honest, fashion design wasn't something that was really talked about where I grew up as a career. You know what I mean? I think the arts were, my parents, neither of them are in the arts, and they didn't understand what that kind of role would be. So I feel like I sort of pushed it off to the side, but I've always loved history again and collected vintage. I used to make cut up things in high school and just make my own outfits, make my own purses or whatever, play with the sewing, even hot glue, like nothing amazing, but just for fun. I don't know, it was something that I just always enjoyed doing and thought it was really fun. When I was applying for colleges, I didn't think about it as a career. I kind of did. I designed my prom dress and I worked with a seamstress, like a friend who had it, made it for me. And I started a sketchbook, but I think I was afraid because I'm not naturally a drawer or an illustrator. So I went to Penn State my freshman year, undecided, tried trying to
Mm.
figure out what I wanted to do. And it just became really clear with all the different classes I was taking there that my real passion was fashion and that I was just going to have to bite the bullet and be afraid of not being the best illustrator and go for it. But luckily, I had made so much stuff that I had a mini portfolio essentially, and I was able to, you know, I think anyone who's an artist or a creative person sometimes has insecurity about their skills, and so maybe you're actually better than you think sometimes, and you got to try.
Yeah.
You never know. You have to try. So
Yeah,
I'm glad that I did.
I feel like there's that distinct moment for anybody that does pursue the arts where, like you said, like you go in and you have insecurities and you understand what your shortcomings are, but then
Right.
there's like that moment where you just have to buy in, you know, you say like, okay, I'm going for it, like,
I
and
mean, some things just come innate, like I feel like sometimes it's kind of like you can't fight what's natural to you. And
Mhm.
I can be a very anal person. I'm like a perfectionist, and that can be hard in fashion because you sometimes just have to go with your instinct and not everything can be perfect. And I think eventually when I went to school and started taking all these different kinds of classes and realized I had no interest in any of these topics to pursue, then it made me realize I just can't fight with what I enjoy, even though, like I said, my parents were just like, go to law school, go to med school, go get your MBA. You know, I think being a fashion designer is not necessarily the first thing that your parents are like, go do that.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's really interesting.
They're definitely going to make less money in fashion than you will as a doctor. I can tell you that for a fact, guys. But that's okay, because there are a lot of there are people who do make money in fashion, and I'm perfectly secure. And there are a lot more roles and availabilities in the arts than there were 10 years ago. And just the amount of jobs that are like titled now that I see when I'm searching for work in design has tripled since I
Really?
first started. Yeah.
Can you explain that a little bit? Like, what kind of new jobs are you seeing?
They've taken a lot of overarching roles and they've broken them down so they're more specialized. So sometimes in the past you would be doing all design. Now there's fabric development. So you could just be working on fabric development. Then there's a separate CAD artist who I said sometimes you're just working on yarn dyes, plaids, and prints. Graphic design used to do all of that, and now graphic designers tend to focus more on graphics for actual t-shirts, and then your CAD artist works on your CADs. Some companies have color teams if they're that big and they do so many colors a season, where your whole job is to approve color. It comes in from bulk submissions. Um, there's more tech design jobs. Tech design is how you make the patterns and figure out the measurements. They've grown those kinds of teams as well, because now some people make patterns in-house. And there's a lot more specialty in fashion. For example, socks is a huge category of growth in fashion in the last 10 years. It
Right.
sounds strange, but the amount of sock companies that have popped up in menswear as well. When I first started in fashion, 2007, that's when men's was like just getting popular on the retail market. It wasn't really a focus before. So, and additionally, just there's so much more technology. So the amount of buying opportunities and styling opportunities you can do just with digital technology has increased as well, because you can do styling from home if you work for a company like Trunk Show or Trunk Club, you know what I mean? And you send pieces to people. So there's just so many, these jobs didn't exist when I was in college because we didn't have online retail for those kinds of things. This is all newer.
That's really interesting to me because it's not, there's a lot of like fields within the arts that are shrinking,
Right.
or like, and it seems that fashion is one that's expanding. But this is like something that I kind of like to talk about with with the students, and also with people that I interview for the students, is just the because at the high, especially at the high school level, which is most of you watching are at, there's such a variety of jobs within every industry that there's just no way that you can be aware of all of them. And that's what I always find so interesting, especially in a field like fashion, like what you just rattled off, which I'm sure is like just kind of like scratching the surface a little bit of like
Yeah.
the variety of different jobs that one can have within the fashion industry.
Yeah, and I think even for me, like when I started, like it was just you go to school for fashion design, you go to school for merchandising, and those were the big things in fashion. You either went for fashion design or merchandising, but actually there's a ton of things in between, like production, where because what I would say is retail has grown and product development has grown. Fashion is part of that juggernaut. So because so many things have gone online with retail, that's why the fashion jobs have expanded, just because in general retail and online shopping platforms have expanded and fashion's gone along with it. But I think I learned about half these jobs after I entered the industry and just started talking to other people. It's not like they're advertised, you know what I mean? You kind of figure it out as you go. I worked for a really large company when I first graduated, so I could see a lot of different roles, but small companies, I prefer working at a small company myself because I'm not sitting at a computer 8 hours a day. My hands are in a lot of pots, you have a small team, so you kind of wear a lot of hats. And I kind of find that for me, that works better. But that's not for everyone. Some people really enjoy tech design and nitty gritty, making a pattern, specking out a sample, and everyone's different.
Yeah. Now, do you find like in, in those like more sort of graphic design based elements of the industry, like the pattern design and all these things. Do you find a lot of people coming in from non-fashion backgrounds that get these jobs?
In the past, yes. Like when I first started and I worked at Macy's, a lot of the designers I worked with, they had psychology degrees, or they had, a business degree, because in the 80s, fashion design, it was like fashion design for working at a company like Macy's, you didn't have to have a degree. Like, yes, if you were going to do runway was different then, couture was different, but in the 80s there wasn't as many there wasn't fast fashion companies. It was department stores that had private label, and it was just done differently. So they used to call it product development when it wasn't runway, which was more like making jeans, or if you see a t-shirt in a store and there's 20 colors, someone had to choose those colors, you know what I mean? And improve that quality of fabrics in order for it to get made. So I guess it's a little bit different.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I mean, I'm just wondering if there's a lot of people that come in from just like graphic design or photography or.
Now, I would say, unless you know people, it's harder because there's so many degrees that are specialized. It might be harder to get a job as an assistant designer if you didn't have any art background.
Sure.
I would say it's becomes more specialized, and there's a bunch of computer skills that you need to know, things about fabric fit that you would need to study in school to sort of, otherwise you would just kind of go in blind. I don't know if you would want to do that, you know what I mean?
So
like I said, it's not a career I would say you go into if you're just thinking about it. It's kind of specific. You have to really love it. You have to be passionate about some aspect of it in order to stick with it.
So do you think there is an emphasis, and I know it varies in different fields within the arts, but there is an emphasis on educational background when you're like vying for these jobs? Like, are they looking at your degree? Are they looking at the school you went to?
I'm curious to see, like, even if you went to a 2-year program, as long as I think if you went to school for math or engineering and then try to get a job in fashion, the question I would have even interviewing someone is, what would make you, why? What would be this choice? You know what I mean? I don't think that it's necessarily people wouldn't look at you, but I would say if you were applying for a job in fashion design and your degree was psychology, you should probably have a really good cover letter or explanation of why you studied psychology but want to do fashion design, because they're just such different things. You know what I mean? I do think there's a lot of technical skill involved with design, that it would be helpful for you to go to school to understand. Fit is super important to me. I mean, I think as a designer, if you don't understand how something fits or why something doesn't fit right, that's a problem for me. So I think that's something really important you need to learn at school in order to be a good designer, whether you're doing men's, women's, children's, or swimwear or evening wear. All of, like, fits like your number one thing. You as a customer, if you bought a pair of pants and they didn't fit, you're going to be mad, right? That's very important part of choosing your clothes. So I think there's those technical skills that really do need to be studied in order to. Some people are naturally artistic. Some people are naturally talented and they don't need certain kinds of training. But like I said, I think in New York, where I want to say half the city is fashion at this point, there's a lot of competition. You have to explain, why you want to do this a little bit.
In addition to having maybe a killer portfolio.
And I think if you have an internship, say you went to school for psychology and then you interned and worked in some places, that would be a different thing. Because I truly believe that your internships are going to be some of the most important experiences you get when finding work. I know for myself, because I had such a solid internship, that I actually, after Drexel's 6 months was up, I went back to school, but I used to go up to New York. I mean, Drexel's in Philadelphia, so it's only an hour and 45-minute bus ride, but I would go up every Friday and I continued my internship with these contacts. And I still keep in contact with the people I interned with. You know what I mean? It's very important to make connections. Half of it in fashion is who you know. You got to make sure you're very good at networking, just because you're going to meet so many people in your career. And I don't, I've left companies or whatever, but you always leave on good terms. You always keep things copacetic with people, because it's a very large but very small industry. And I've run into a lot of people from 11 years ago in my life, and I think it's important.
Yeah, I always explain that to people. I'm just like, you have this conception that New York is such a big town, and population-wise it is, but Manhattan is only 3 miles wide and 15 miles from top to bottom. It's a small town.
Yeah.
you know, and you're right on top of each other. But you've been touching on things that that I'm glad you did, and I want to maybe talk about a little bit further, is the importance of internships,
Yeah.
and like maybe some resources that you know about, or some what strategies you used
Yeah.
to acquire and perform well in an internship, and what
Yeah. I mean,
probably what you witnessed too now, having interns of your own, you know,
yeah, I do have interns. When I was interning, I was lucky because Drexel has a co-op program. There was someone who had worked in the industry who did try and make connections for us, and he would know someone in the HR department. So a lot of it was just kind of reaching out on our own. I just really wanted to leave Philadelphia and go to New York. I think it's a scary thing to do, but it's like being an actor. You can be an actor anywhere, but of course, if you want to do certain things, like go to Hollywood for a little bit, try Los Angeles, you know what I mean? Like New York to me was the center of fashion. So even if I was only moving for 6 months, I felt like it was important for me to step outside of my comfort zone, my city, and like sort of be in this new inspirational place, like where I felt like to me, New York is the fashion city of the United States, not of the world, but of the United States. So I think it's important to like think outside the box a little bit, like maybe try a new location, push yourself. You don't know what other experiences you'll do from just living in a different city. But like I said, I was lucky because we had help with this, but I had to do a portfolio. I had to sketch, and I had to go meet the creative director of Michael Kors Men's, which was terrifying as I think I was 20,
Mhm.
when you're just talking to your professors in school. But I don't know. I think you just kind of you have to be confident in yourself. Like I said, it's always insecurity, especially in the arts. But I got off of that train at Penn Station and it was 95 degrees outside and I was like sweating and running to this interview, but I was just smiling because I knew it's what I wanted to do. So I guess I sold myself, I just
Mhm.
was myself. I answered the questions to the best of my ability. Always prep before you go on an interview, regardless of it's an internship, a part-time job, a full-time job. Never walk into an interview without doing research on the company or a person you're interviewing with or something, because you're going to need to have a question or two ready. They want you to be engaged when you're interviewing. They don't just want to be talking the whole time, and they want to know what you're interested in as well. For me, sometimes the most important part of an interview is what somebody asked me. So that's just something I would think about as you're looking for whatever job it is, whether if it's fashion or not. Like, do your research on the company and have some interesting questions, because the more they know that you did the work, the more confident they'll already be in your ability to think forward.
Mhm. Yeah, and also this is something that Janet has always said to me too, in terms of like the level of engagement that you should have during an interview, to keep in mind that you're interviewing them as much as they're interviewing you.
Exactly. I find that that's something I've learned a lot. And also, I go on every interview, even if I'm not really that interested in the job, or maybe I applied for it and then I wasn't anymore. I still go on the interview if I'm remotely, because it's great practice. It can never hurt to even have a bad interview. You're going to have them. I had an interview once where the guy was trying to prove himself. I don't know what he was even interviewing me for, because he was sort of trying to prove his job was awesome. And I think it was a very confusing interview. You kind of have to just go with the flow. Like I said, you want to just keep a positive rapport with people, because you never know when you're going to run into them again.
Sure.
Um, but yeah, I mean, I think you have to just know that you did your research, and I think people they see that. And also eye contact. It's a very difficult thing to do, to constantly look somebody in the eye, especially if you don't know them, but it shows confidence. It's really important that you're not fiddling, looking down, that you're engaged with your face and your body language as well, because people see that in an interview. If you're slouched and you know, security is something that if you feel good about yourself, someone who's interviewing
Yeah.
is already going to feel better about that.
And these are all skills that one can practice, you know.
Totally. Yeah.
I mean, not everybody starts out being great at those things,
No,
you know.
no. It's like interviewing it's a skill in itself, and it takes time. And there was, like I said, I've had a few bad interviews in my life. I've had some really amazing ones, and I've had, but definitely the more you do it, the more comfortable you are with your abilities. And also when you get further into your career, whatever you're doing, you'll be interviewing the company much more in a way than they'll be interviewing you, because you want to make sure you're at a place that you're happy with, which can be challenging sometimes to find the right fit in your career.
Yeah. I want to move on to like the sort of the next step of that is that like, what are the maybe like personality habits and work habits that you look for in a good interview or in a good intern, somebody that's working for you?
For me, especially in the jobs, like in the showroom that we have here, we really look for people that are good problem solvers and people that are good independent thinkers. For example, something comes up and you don't know how to do it. Well, maybe I love it when someone goes, I didn't know how to do this, but I looked it up and I figured it out. I just wanted to check with you and make sure this is right. That initiative off the bat is something I completely respect and love, because instead of just being like, I didn't know, like they took that extra time to go look for themselves before coming and not say bugging me, but if I have 11 people that report to me on a daily basis and someone doesn't know how to print something where they can look it up, I'm so happy that they took the time to look it up instead of interrupting me when I have 11 people. You know what I mean? Like that sort of initiative I think is really important. And I know all of my bosses, we all look for that when we're interviewing with people. Like how do you think? Like how do you process problem solving? Super important. And focus. You know, if someone's in an interview and they're on their cell phone or they're texting or they're not paying attention, don't like that at all. You know, be engaged when you're there. There's 1,000 distractions going on in our lives, but put your phone down. Don't be texting when you're talking to someone about something. That shows that you're not really that interested or you're not that focused or something else is more important. You know what I mean? Not that your job should never obviously be your entire world, but if it's something that you're interested in and you want to do, then you need to show that, you know what I mean? So be engaged.
Yeah, it's be where you are when you're there, you know?
Yeah.
It's like be present in the process. Yeah, I've had the same experience too with interns of mine where it's like you said, it's that independent thinking initiative, because there was nothing that irritated me more than telling an intern to like look it up, you know, like why you know, like this, you could have literally just Googled this, you know,
right, exactly.
or
It's like
something.
self starters, you know, like that's something that, especially because I work in a small business, that's something we look for in general, because we want people who can just jump right in and like get comfortable learning as they go. You know what I mean? Also be honest about your flaws or your weaknesses. You know, I always ask people in interviews standard questions, but like what do you think is great about this? What do you think you're going to struggle with? What are some things that you need to work on? That doesn't necessarily mean we're going to hire you, because nobody's perfect. You know what I mean? But if I know that, okay, your weakness is you're late all the time or something, you know what I mean? Like at least I have like an understanding of like why, like you struggle with time management and that's something that you sometimes need help with. Then I can, as a boss, know okay, the person needs check-ins or whatever. So just be honest, you know, there's always the saying, fake it till you make it. And I sort of half believe that, but don't fake it till you make it in your attitude, but don't blatantly lie on your resume. That's just never going to be a good thing. If you don't know how to use a program, put down that you know how to use a program, because the second someone asks you to do it,
yeah, it can turn into a precarious situation.
definitely fake it till you make it in your attitude. Like, yes, I can do anything once I learn how to do it. Yes, I'm fabulous once, but you know, that's confidence. That's not lying. That's a different thing.
Yeah, totally. What I have just a couple general questions that I ask a lot of people that I interview. I'll just kind of like roll them off. What is your favorite part of your career? What's your least favorite part of your career? And what would an outsider be surprised to know about your career or fashion in general? You know, just to kind of like dispel like preconceived notions of like what life and fashion is actually like.
Well, I would say that my favorite part about doing what I do is I really believe in the true value of historical fashion and what fashion means as to our culture, to our history. I know some people may think that it's so shallow, it's so surface, but it's not. I mean, if you look at the history of our country or in the world, I can tell what year it is if I see someone's clothes. And I think that's absolutely wonderful, because that's the same thing that happens with history of architecture, history of art, history of food. You know, I think fashion is just another way to discuss culture and just human interaction. And I love that. I think there's such an art form in the way that clothes were made. Just so, it really truly was artistic. It was an art piece. Half of them were sculptures. And I just love the history of costume. I love the history of fashion. And I think there's something so wonderfully inspiring about just getting up in the morning, putting on something that makes you feel so happy with yourself. I don't think that's shallow. I think that that means, that to me makes my day, you know. And I think that if people were to not take it so serious all the time and just enjoy, you know, what they're putting on or having fun, I think people would enjoy fashion more and understand the value of it more. But there's a history and culture there, and it's important. It's very important. And I think if people understood, like, why were zippers invented? Why were there's 75 different kinds of zippers, but the reason why certain zippers were used after World War II, you know, like, there's all these things that are so interesting that if people really were to dig deeper into the history of fashion, they would see how it relates to the history of our culture.
Mm.
And I personally just love that, and I value that, and I always have.
That's
That's
really
my favorite. That's my favorite. I mean, like, literally, like, I mean, you know, we're all sitting at home, but like, I don't know how to flip this screen here to show you guys, but this place is amazing. Like, I work in a mecca. Like, this is hundreds of thousands of pieces of fashion from the 1820s, the 1860s. I can go up and touch them, you know, and I can understand them, and I know their story. I know we had a jacket that we just sold to somebody that was Madonna or in her one video, you know, or I have a piece from the 1820s. It's just like, we have things in here that the museums, the Met Institute, the Met Gala has come to us and almost bought pieces to put in their museum. You know, like, so I live in a museum every day, and I can touch it, and I think it's wonderful.
Yeah.
The least favorite part about my job or my career, I would say, I don't know how to say, it can be very difficult when you study design or you study fashion and then it's a business, and that's just the reality of it. And you can't do your job unless you design product that buyers want to buy and put in their stores. And you have people who went to school, business majors or they're psychology majors, now they're buyers for a store, and they're telling you all their opinions, but all the things that you do. And it can be very challenging. You have to have a really thick skin. You have to be able to take, out of 100 people, maybe half of them hate what you do, but the other half love it. And you got to be okay with that, you know, and you got to be able to take constructive criticism and not just be like, well, I did it because of this. And I did it because, you have to absorb, and it can be really difficult because you can't take it personal, because it's a business. And if you don't make money, you have your job, but at the same time, your job is about art and you're working in a business. So that back and forth play has been a challenge for me in my career, because of course I understand we need to make money in order to survive, but on a personal note, it's very hard to have someone, you know, change everything you design because last season purple did better, you know, and you have to hit your margin.
It's interesting because I think that there's a lot of different industry. I mean, probably every industry can identify with that in a certain way of having to take criticism from somebody whose opinion you may not respect or hold in high regard, you know, but they just might be in a position where they are overseeing your project, and that's just the reality of the situation because it's business.
It's the absolute reality, and that's the thing. I think fashion is a business, and that's just the truth of it. You know, I could design as many beautiful things as I wanted, but if nobody's buying them, then I can't have my brand, you know what I mean? So there's a back and forth in that. I mean, that's something I've learned to get much better at the older I've gotten. You know, I'm 35 years old, but when I was 21 and I first started, it really crushed my soul, you know. Now I'm like, okay, I get it. You know, it's just about learning professionalism and understanding, you know, more about it and not taking it personal. And you get better at it as you get older.
and maybe like I know that I've worked with some people musically in this way. One of the producers that I worked with for a recording project, is he had this like really like Buddhist approach to everything, where he was just like, he made an effort to not to have as little attachment to his ideas as possible. so that he wasn't, so that they, because I mean, you can get so much attachment to something that they feel like your children or something.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And to just do that mental exercise where it's just like, it's just another idea. Ideas come and they go, and you can always have more of them. And if this one doesn't work, then another one can, and he was very like Zen about it. I don't think everybody is like that, but
No.
it was an interesting philosophy. When I worked with him, I was like, wow.
Yeah.
It's
I
an
mean,
interesting way to
ideas,
put
like you
it.
said, ideas are not necessarily owned. I mean, I also think in today's world, to be so completely outside the box, thinking that something seems so brand new, you got to be real spectacular, because that's why I do what I do, because people are constantly looking back at, the history of fashion. How do we rework it and think of it in a new way? But the human body is the human body, and there's only so many different forms and shapes you can put on it. You know what I mean? So you have to kind of interpret those old bodies into new concepts. And it's what I love. Like, I don't know if anyone is familiar with the brand Nikki Zimmerman. She's an Australian designer. She does really like very sexy like wear. She's a client of ours, and she mostly buys Victorian, which I always think is so interesting, because Victorian is the most tight up. It's all high neck, and it's all about being closed up. There was not this freedom in your clothing, and yet a lot of contemporary designers take it and make it very sexy, very sensual, very, very body. And I love that, because they're taking something and they're interpreting it completely different, but they're using the beautiful handmade lace and a high neck, and how does that ruffle turn into a fantastic sleeve for a resort kimono, so it's interesting seeing, those back and forths there.
Yeah. And the last one is, what would somebody entering the fashion industry or somebody from the outside be very surprised to know about your profession?
That it's less glamorous than people think. I mean, there is a lot of glamour involved in it, but I would say 75% of the jobs are not glamorous, and you are doing, it's work, and I love what I do. It's taken me a long time to sort of say that out loud. I've had jobs I've disliked a lot. I've had jobs that I liked, but I worked far too many hours. But I do love what I do, and it's taken me, most of my career to kind of get there and say that. But it's a job, and it can be unglamorous. And sometimes you're on your hands and knees pinning up a hem for someone, or running, when you're an intern, you're running a lot of weird errands. But yeah, I would say that people would be surprised how much actual physical work is involved with fashion. And it's not just sitting in meetings and all like, whoa, beautiful, dramatic, love it, move on. No.
Yeah, that's great. Well, at this point, I want to open up the floor for some questions. I'm sure some of you guys, I'm going to switch to gallery view here again. I don't know if you noticed, we have Samaria in the house. She's one of the students that you talked to.
We chatted on the phone. Hi.
Hello.
I recognize your name.
I'm seeing you more than just hearing you.
Yeah, we only talked last time. That's true. We didn't FaceTime.
Yeah.
If I could only figure out how to flip my Zoom screen, I could give you guys a real nice tour of the showroom, because I can't really see well on my tablet, but I don't know how to do that for some reason.
It should say switch camera on.
Oh, yeah. If you go to, where it says, do you have a little thing that says
front
stop
camera, Microsoft camera rear. Okay, cool. I can do that if anyone doesn't have questions, that's okay. I know I talk a lot.
I'm sure there's got to be some questions. Pipe in, guys. Oh yeah, yes, over here.
Hi. So I actually don't go to Toledo School for the Arts, but I went there.
What's your name?
My name is Maya.
Hi, Maya.
Nice to meet you. First off, thank you for being so thorough and so talkative in your questions. Your job's been very interesting and very cool.
Yeah.
I'm actually pursuing a career in fashion. I study fashion.
Oh, great.
And so I kind of wanted to know, like, as a student, what is something that really sticks out to you on a cover letter or in a portfolio, before you go into the interview, before you get to that step? What's something that makes you want to invite a potential intern or a potential worker in for an interview?
So honestly, for me, I'm very visual because I work in fashion. So the layout of a resume, the way that something looks visually, to me has to be clean And I can't tell you how many typos I find in cover letters and resumes. I'm talking adults, senior level jobs. It's such a turnoff for me, and I know it's a turnoff for other people. Double check your work. So definitely, I know that sounds really basic, but make sure everything's spelled proper. Be clear in your thoughts. Don't write 4,000 paragraphs. Unfortunately, we all don't have time when we're getting these things to read 4,000 paragraphs. I always, when I look at a cover letter, for a resume, especially because you're in the beginning of your career, it should be no longer than 1 page. Again, nobody has time to flip through 14 pages. They want to see it on a screen. They want to get the most information they can from you. That's why when I say I'm very visual, I like it when, and I know this from other people I've asked as well, if your resume is clear, so the font is very readable, that you have bullets describing your job instead of 14 sentences about what you did, because again, bullet points are easier to see, the proper spacing, because when you're writing tons of sentences, they're not going to read all of your paragraphs, you know what I mean? So I would recommend to be focused in both your cover letter and your resume. Make sure it's just very clean visually so that everything's definable. If you were to pull it up, you would be able to see experience. Maybe experience needs to be bolded or underlined, however your resume looks. And then your job title is a different thing. I like to use designators of italics, bold, or underline so that it's very clear, or even just a font size. So you want your headers to be slightly larger and your company to be a little smaller, and then your words to be smaller, so that even if someone doesn't have a chance to read all of your job descriptions, they're like, oh, I see she worked at Mac Makeup Counter. Okay, yeah. So like, try and make your information just concise and clear, because I find you'll get better response than being overly verbose, which I'm a very verbose person, and I learned the shorter I was, the more information I got across quicker, the better off I was. So I would play with your layouts, with your resumes as well, because I also find people in fashion are very visual. Like when you work in data, I used to see, it's just fine to do a regular resume, but when you work in design, your resume should reflect your design, sort of like the cleanliness of it, I guess, and how clear you are. And feel free, if anyone wants to send me, especially you, because it's for fashion, if you want to send me cover letters and resumes, I will happily review them and edit them for you, and we can talk about it. Because it's hard when you first start doing it. There's 4,000 templates that you can get on Google. It should reflect your personality. I like to throw in a little color on mine, not on the background, but just like highlight certain words, because it speaks to who I am, because I love color and I'm not a black and white kind of person. So that, I think those little bits will help. And instead of doing a full cover letter for myself at this point, at the very top of mine, I just put like a what I'm really wanting. You know what I mean? Or like a little, like I call it a spiel. It's like a little mini spiel essentially. So that if you don't have the ability to send in a cover letter with a resume, your resume will contain a smidge of your cover letter there, just in a few sentences at the top. I personally like looking at those because it kind of combines your cover letter resume together.
Okay. Well, then I will probably take you up on that if that is an option.
Yeah, and when you're writing a cover letter, it's really important to be like, I'm super interested in this job because, but again, you don't want to write 3 paragraphs. You kind of want like an intro. Hi, my name, like, nice to meet you. My name is da 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 da. Second thing, this is why I'm interested in the job. This is why I'm good at it. Third, let me know if you have any, you know, want to keep it like, I always like an intro sentence or two, and closing sentence or two, and just a few sentences in the middle. Be clear. I mean, you want to share your information, but I'm just telling you, no one's going to read 3 paragraphs. They just don't have
goes on your resume.
Hmm?
That little intro and like closing thing goes on your resume.
Yeah, so some resume formats, it's what I did on mine recently. At the very top, there's like, some people call it an objective. I could send you guys my resume if you wanted to look at it, just to like see like a sample of something. I've had to expand mine to a 9x12 and shove it all in because I don't like looking at resumes more than 1 page, but I've been working for 14 years, so it makes it a little bit harder as you go. That's another thing, is you'll learn to edit. All my jobs from when I first started in my career have less information. So all your jobs that are most relevant are the ones you want to have more information on. If you're applying for a job in fashion and you have Starbucks experience, you don't need to play that up. You know what I mean? You can just put it on there, like additional experience, but you don't need to like go wild on describing what you did as a barista. You know what I mean? Like, again, keep it clean and concise.
So when you
I
run
don't know
in
what
those,
they call that at the top. I think it's called objective. I call it
Yeah,
a spiel.
objective. It usually says objective. It's almost like a mission statement in a certain
Yeah.
way, but
Yeah, like for mine, because my resume is so a little bizarre and eclectic, I like to say like with my this and experience, I can really do a little bit, it's like I'll send it to you guys if you want to see it. It's nothing spectacular, but it just might help for a visual.
yeah, maybe what we could do is you could send that material to me, and then
Mhm.
any of you who are watching right now, if you would like any of this information, you can reach out to me in my school email. And if you want to get connected to Alex, I can connect you guys too. That'd probably be the easiest way to.
Yeah, that's fine. And then the other thing with the cover letter is if you do have any personal connection to anyone at the company or something about the company, I've thrown that out. Like, oh, when I applied for a job at Kate Spade, even though I didn't end up wanting to do women's wear, but I used to work with the creative director at Kate Spade when I was an intern at Michael Kors and accessories like 12 years ago. So I threw that in the cover letter. I don't know if that cover letter is ever going to get to the creative director, but hey, it can't hurt to throw in that you know someone. Like I said, it's connections and networking is super important. So it's if you have a connection of any sorts, find a nice subtle way to call it out.
Yeah. And that brings me to an interesting point is do you have any advice about maintaining professional relationships with, like you said, you've maintained relationships with people all the way back to people that you've interned with.
Yeah.
I mean, how you manage that in an organic way?
Well, I mean, sometimes I think some of it comes down to personality. I am always a connection keeper. It's kind of the way I've always been. But for me, when it comes to career, I find that even when it's awkward, like I haven't talked to someone in 5 years, but I still have their email. I've reached out to a ton of people in the last year because after I tore my ACL and was on sabbatical, like I said, I was exploring working in women's wear, doing something different than vintage. And I'm just honest. Hey, how are you? Haven't talked to you in such a long time. I see that because LinkedIn has so much good information now. I have to say I do love LinkedIn. I use it all the time for my job. I use it all the time when I'm interviewing people. All of your information's out on the web. Don't put anything stupid on Instagram. People will look you up. I look up everyone that I interview. I look up your social media. I want to know what, like, especially for interns, like just be smart about your social media and your social presence because all your information's out there and people can look you up in 3 seconds. Sorry, that was like a diluted. That's just a
It's important though. That's really important.
No, I look up everyone who I interview on Instagram because I'm curious. I want to know personalities. Yeah. I want to make sure personalities mix well with the rest of the team too.
Yeah.
Sorry, Lucas, refresh me on I get sidetracked.
Just maintaining professional.
I honestly, for me, it is organic. I think that's a harder thing for some people that might not be natural, but keep in contact with the people that you think might be relevant. If you're not sure, connect with them on LinkedIn and just shoot them a little message. Hey, I haven't seen you in a while. I was just on LinkedIn and I wanted to connect. I think there's a ton of networking tools, but it's just about keeping in contact. People know when you're looking for new jobs and you're at companies, no one feels bad that you're reaching out to them and saying, hey, I know you work there, help me out. You know what I mean? But that's why I think never leave a company with a tizzy. I've had some jobs where I'm like, this is terrible. I don't want to do this job, but my last job before I came back to the design archive, the woman I worked for, she was insane. I mean, legitimately just flipped on me overnight, was perfectly pleasant for the first 5 weeks of work. And then just had it out for me for the next 2 months. And I was like, you know what? I don't want to do this. But I didn't leave and tell her, oh, you're such a mean person. Oh, you're a terrible boss. I was just like, this isn't the right role for me. And I wish you nothing but the best. And I hope we can, keep in contact for future, because you never know, even though that person's batshit crazy, she might know somebody who's not batshit crazy who's going to need to help you find a job later. So, like I said, it's not about, I used to think that if I didn't leave a job and tell them all the terrible things that they did at that company, that I was selling out. And now I realize there's a way to go about it where you're talking to HR about specific things, but you're always being professional. You can give feedback and give negative commentary and still be professional. No one's going to be like, great for you for saying F you to someone and walking out the door. It sounds really fun. I know it seems like it could be the best feeling of your whole life.
Just like,
but Yeah, it's a great feeling and it looks great on film, but in real life, you probably want to be more professional about the way you leave a place. And I think that's why I've been lucky, because I've always been very good when I've left a place, even if it's been a bad situation, to keep a positive networking opportunity. And if you're not sure, I would ask someone via email or via LinkedIn, hey, I was just wanted to connect, because that's a real neutral place where anyone would be able to reach out. So if you're feeling uncomfortable about emailing or texting someone, I think LinkedIn's a good place to start because it's a neutral ground.
Yeah, and that's the premise for the whole platform in the first place.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Anybody else got some other questions? Switch back to
Okay, so you said that you're just now, you can finally say you love your job. Well, okay, I just started with like designing and interior and things like that I want to do in the long term. And I had an internship for an interior design company, but I feel like I'm losing interest faster, quicker than I should be. But I want to still continue to do that because I don't want to regret not being able to do it.
Well, can I ask what is it that you're losing interest in? Is it what they do on a daily basis, or is it the company? Do you feel that it's something at the company that's not grasping you?
I just feel like I don't even know if I want to design anymore.
But that's why you do these things. That's actually great, because sometimes you have to try 10 things to, like, you have to do 10 things you don't love in order to do the thing you love. You know what I mean? Like like I said, I've had a lot of different design jobs and some I've liked better than others, but now I realize I'm not great at sitting on a computer for 8 hours. I went back to it again this summer when I was doing women's wear design, and I hated it. And I was like, I want to work in a showroom because I like being on my feet and I like talking to people more. So, it's like, I would say keep the internship or whatever the opportunity is to sort of figure out, hey, you don't want to do it. I don't know, how long have you been at it?
Just this past year, just like getting more into, like, I've done at home projects and stuff like that, but the more I do it, I just kind of don't want to do it anymore.
I think that's perfectly fine. I think it's awesome that you tried it. You know what I mean? I mean, there's nothing wrong with not being sure. And if you like design and now you want to maybe try fashion or a different kind of design, then do another internship. That's why I'm saying I think internships are the best thing ever, because you see real life experience of what that field is. And I don't think there's anything wrong with saying, I didn't like this. This is not for me. If anything, that's just going to help you focus when you're looking for your next experience and help you figure out more what you want to do for school. Because I don't know if I'm getting in trouble for saying this, but you don't have to go to college right away. Like you can figure out like what you want to do and then go. I mean, I went right away, and I know most people do, but I find that that's something if I knew one or two people who didn't do it, and it's okay to work before you go to college if you want to take some experience. I don't know if I'm allowed to say that, Mark and Lucas, but
no, I mean,
there's a lot of different ways to be educated, and college is expensive. I'm still paying for Drexel. I'm 35, so I've been paying for it for 14 years, and I'm still paying it off. And luckily, I do love being in fashion. But out of the 30 people who I graduated with, 20 of them don't do fashion. So it was a very expensive school to go and get a design degree in and then not use it. You know what I mean? So I actually think there's no harm in taking a year to try and work in a field or work in some internships while you're maybe taking some community colleges to get your basics out, because then when you pick your school, you're going to really know that's what you want to do. And also some more 2-year programs, like FIT has 2-year programs instead of 4-year programs. So you can get associates in certain designs, which if you're not like 100%, you could always get like an associate's in fashion design or an associate's in interior. You know what I mean? And you can always get your bachelor's in another form of design. So there are some programs that are 2-year that might give you more flexibility.
So would you say you love it just because you found like that exact field of design?
I don't think I love it because I think what I love about it, and this is, to be honest, I think comes with age, I'm more comfortable with, I know what I want more. I don't think I 100% knew what I wanted out of a job. You know, I think there's a lot of idea that you go to, like I said, it's design and it's fashion and it's going to be so spectacular and you're going to make all these decisions. And then the reality of all this stuff can kind of weigh on you. Some jobs are amazing for people. Some jobs are amazing for the benefits. You know, it's kind of hard for me to say that it was the job, one thing or another. I was a workaholic for a really long time. I used to work really far too many hours and I was miserable because I was working 12-hour days. And some of that's on me, you know what I mean? So I think some of it's just learning with age what I really wanted and what I actually value about a job, which is different than what I originally thought it was. So that's why I say it's taken me this long, because I've liked a lot of my jobs, but to say that I really love what I do, I think it's taken. Also, I had a really rough 2 years where like my husband lost his job. I tore my ACL. I had a bone disease. It was like, it's a whole sorts of mess. You know, life gets crazy and it makes you appreciate things differently as well when you start working again. So, you know, life is funny. Things will happen.
You touched on like two things that I think are super valuable. That is, number one, like your destination is a constantly moving target.
Yeah.
I feel like. And the other thing is that learning that you don't like doing something or that you don't want to do something is extremely valuable information.
Yeah. It's not a waste. Like I don't think anything I did last year working in women's design was a waste. I just in the end was like, this is not for me. I don't want to do this anymore, but I'm glad I know that. And also I think why I'm happier now, to your points more, is because I realize that my goal is a moving target, where I'm a very like, this is my goal, this is what I want, this is what I have to achieve. And that's a very rigid way to do things. And so it's easy to fail yourself when you keep something so rigid. And I think the older I've gotten, I realize more that target of what does a successful career mean to me versus what I thought it was when I was 20. And also, don't compare yourself to other people, because everybody is on their own path. And you look at somebody else and you think, oh, they're so much more successful than me. They have this amazing job. They've been there for 10 years. They have a house, da 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 da. But you never know what someone's going through. I had a friend who's like, I thought his job was the best thing in the world. And secretly he hated his, you know what I mean? So don't compare yourself and your successes to anyone else, because it really has nothing to do with anybody else. Everyone's experience, it might look like they're successful, but true success is enjoying what you do. It's not about, I make less money probably working in vintage than I did if I still kept in corporate design, but I'm happier because I like going into my job every day. So like I said, sometimes your goal will be making money. Sometimes it will be being super creative, but let it be a moving target. I like the way you said that, Lucas, because you can't always be rigid sometimes in those things. Things will surprise you, I guess, is what I can say.
Yeah, it's a very like non-linear, it's a very non-linear process, you know.
And when you allow yourself to be more open and not feel so rigid, I felt that was very mentally freeing for myself.
Cool. Any other questions, guys? All right. Are you able to flip your camera around so we can?
Let me see if I can. Okay, so if I do camera rear, is that what that means?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm on a tablet, so I'm gonna see if I can flip you.
I don't think.
No.
Yeah.
Okay. So anyway, this is our showroom. This whole nook back here is evening gowns and cocktail. I don't know if you ever seen Clueless, and one of my favorite lines is she's like, "This is an Alaya. This is an Alaya. This is a very famous Alaya." Her Alaya dress was red, in case anyone loves Clueless like I do. But this is all designer cocktail. This also goes back to the 1950s all the way back here. But some of these are a little bit more contemporary because we do a lot of, like, we have a showroom in LA that we share garments with for, like, you know, celebrity shows and runway carpet and things like this. This is a piece that our creative director actually made. It's 1920s. This is all hand embroidered. It's called a piano shawl. So people used to actually throw these ginormous, heavily embroidered shawls over their pianos to keep them from dust. We have converted them into evening wear and cocoons and evening shapes. So you can do a lot of things with a lot of little fabric pieces. I don't know if you guys ever saw the movie The Great Gatsby. Everyone's always into these 1920s, gorgeous beaded. It's 100 years old.
Wow.
It's 100 years old. I mean, like that's something that I think people also don't understand. It's 100 years old and it's still surviving. Like you can wear it, you can dance around. This is all Versace. We're big Versace collectors here. I don't know if you guys maybe a little bit too young, but that safety pin collection is very pivotal. 1992, 93. You become a fashion nerd when you start getting into this stuff. My favorite decade for evening wear, 1930s, because everything was cut on the bias, so it hugs your body. It's just beautiful. Here's some hippie suede and boho. We have a lot of loungewear and robes. These are kimonos from the 40s and 50s. Men used to wear them smoking jackets. Jean-Paul Gaultier is a famous designer. He just recently decided to sort of retire from his doing couture, and he's invited other designers to design with him. But so we have a huge collection of Jean-Paul Gaultier here. And like I said, this whole room, it's a whole wall. So a lot of this stuff is from the 1800s down here. So if you can see this bustier, sorry, I only have one hand.
And in what part of New York City is the showroom located?
It's in, I'm gonna put you down for 1 second so I can fix this Victorian blouse. It is in Midtown. It's called the Garment District. So it's on 36th Street between 7th and 8th Avenue. Like I said, I think it'd be fun if you wanted to follow our Instagram. See, look at that. It's Victorian.
Wow.
But see, Nikki Zimmerman could take that and just turn that beautiful fringe trim into like a little bandeau crop top and then put it on the bottom of pants, and then she'd have a little resort set. So yeah, we are up here is the more antique stuff. So this is all 1920s. You can kind of see the bead shining up there. We keep it away. So obviously oils on your hands will damage pieces. Pieces down here are a little bit more from the 50s, 40s and up. So you get a little bit, you can touch them and play with them more. This is all, sorry, we're in the middle of clearing out the showroom while we're not open for pandemic. So we're cleaning. Caftans, kimonos. We have an insane kimono collection. I'll take you over to the ceremonial ones. This jacket here is very, very famous. It's a teddy bear coat. It's by a designer named Jean-Charles de Casteljabac. And here you can see if you want to look up this coat, it's kind of cool. His name's spelled in French in there. This is the coat that the Met Institute came to inspect and almost put in. Someone else donated theirs for the camp exhibit that just happened this past year. But yeah, this is an extremely famous coat and it's worth over $15,000. Wow. Ceremonial kimonos from the 20s and through the 40s from Japan. And then just a bunch of new stuff that we're inventorying, and I have a bunch of shipping that I'm working on today. So there's kind of a little bit of an overall, but it kind of goes on and on. But yeah.
It's amazing.
What do you do with the clothes that you guys can't touch that like are so?
Well, we can touch everything. It's just we tend to put them up so that a lot of people aren't touching them, and we keep them in bags. Certain things can't go in plastic bag, like you shouldn't store fur or anything that has a natural, like leathers, furs, feathers can't be stored inside plastic bags. So a lot of times we keep them open or we keep them up. We're not generally glove wearers here because everything is for sale for retail, but we're very, very delicate, and like you just got to explain nicely to people to be gentle with stuff, you know what I mean? But yeah, your oil on your hands will like sometimes take things away. And then silk is a natural fiber, so it'll dry out. Like it'll actually dry like skin would. So sometimes you have to be really careful when you touch something, because if something, it's called dry rot. So when natural fiber items get super dry from age, or maybe they've been in sunlight for too long, it'll just fall apart because the fiber itself is dry rot. But you kind of learn all these tricks as you go. This is like stuff that's hard to like, this is not even stuff I learned in school. This is all stuff I've learned on the job through experience.
Amazing.
So.
Well, cool. I mean, if there's nothing else, does anybody else have any last questions? All right. I mean, I guess we can wrap this up. Thank you so much, Alex,
No problem.
for talking to us. This was really amazing. This was a great interview. And
Wait, I have one more
oh,
question.
yeah, go for it, Samaria.
So when all this stuff is over and I graduate this year,
You want an internship? Is that what?
look at you, read my
Networking
mind.
already. I love it. Exactly. Yeah. No, seriously, reach out. We're always looking for interns. We only can hire interns for school credit. So it just has to be something where we can get an approval for school credit. But yeah, we're always looking for interns. So anyone who's interested and wants to move to New York for some time or whatever, let me know. And I also, like, the reason I say, like, I made a lot of connections in my career, and I love connecting people together to get people in the right fits for jobs. So even if you're not sure what you want to do, I know a lot of people who work in a lot of fields, and I like networking. So it's okay. Ask me and I'll help you out if I can.
Please and thank you.
Yeah.
Awesome.
That's one thing that's good about bouncing around and working in 4 or 5 different companies. I have a lot of connections because everyone at those 4 or 5 companies now works at 4 or 5 companies. So you see how it's a web. It starts here and then.
Kind of like the coronavirus.
Exactly. Way safer. And more effective for your career, because this is crushing everyone's career.
Yeah.
But
cool.
All right. Well, if you guys have any questions or you need anything, just talk to Lucas. He has all my contact info. And like I said, I'm more than happy to help. And I'm always interested in what the next generation of designers is doing. So I love to hear.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Well, thank you so much, Alex.
You're welcome.
And I'll talk to you at our next happy hour.
Yeah, our next happy hour. All right. Bye, guys. Have a good day.
See you later, everybody. Have a good spring break. Okay, bye.